Brandon Duran was born in 1980 in San Diego, California, to a father who was an avid motorcyclist and a former member of the Bandito Motorcycle Club, which the FBI classified as a criminal organization. When Brandon was approximately 10 years old, his parents divorced. However, they maintained a cordial relationship and shared responsibilities in raising him. Brandon inherited his father's passion for motorcycles and, at the age of 25, constructed his own bike from the ground up, which became a cherished possession. Although he socialized with fellow bikers, he never affiliated himself with a motorcycle club. Tragically, his life took a significant turn when his father passed away unexpectedly in April 2005, leading Brandon into a deep depression. In an effort to cope with his grief, he resolved to change his circumstances and embarked on a motorcycle road trip to Las Vegas. During his year-long stay in Las Vegas, he met Amber Andrews, 24, and they quickly fell in love. Their whirlwind romance culminated in marriage just 2 months later, and Amber soon became pregnant. In December 2006, they welcomed their son, Brando, which marked a pivotal change in Brandon's life. He embraced his roles as a devoted father and husband, prioritizing his family over personal pursuits and securing a lucrative job. In contrast, Amber struggled to adjust to her new responsibilities as a mother, continuing to attend biker gatherings and parties. This divergence in priorities led to a rapid decline in the family's relationships, with conflicts becoming increasingly frequent. The divorce, which was an unavoidable conclusion, was filed just 4 years after their marriage. Brandon was awarded full custody of their child, as he demonstrated a greater capacity to provide for both himself and his son compared to Amber. Following the finalization of the divorce in 2010, Amber returned to her hometown in Oklahoma, while Brandon relocated back to San Diego with their child. There, he was reunited with his family, who assisted him in raising his son. As time progressed, Brandon began to heal from the emotional scars of the failed marriage and grew more hopeful about the future. However, in the summer of 2012, Amber unexpectedly appeared at his home, seeking a second chance at their relationship. Brandon's long-buried emotions resurfaced, and he decided to trust Amber's intentions, agreeing to rekindle their relationship. With their son, Brando, set to start kindergarten in September, Amber suggested that the three of them visit her parents in Oklahoma, who were eager to see their grandson. Brandon agreed, and they began making arrangements for a week-long trip. A few days before their scheduled return to San Diego, Brandon received a troubling communication from Van Emblem, who contacted the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation. He reported that his friend and employer, 30-year-old Justin Hammer from Garvin County, had solicited his assistance in disposing of a body, claiming it belonged to Brandon Duran. The Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation promptly notified the local sheriff, who, along with his assistant, visited Hammer's ranch. They also reached out to Brandon's relatives in San Diego, who reported that they had been unable to contact him for several days. The authorities confirmed this information but chose not to disclose the specifics of the case to Brandon's family. During an interrogation, Justin Hammer unexpectedly admitted to killing Brandon Duran. However, he asserted that it was an act of self-defense. Hammer alleged that on August 7, Brandon, a member of a notorious motorcycle gang, forcibly entered his home, kicked down the door, and threatened him. According to Hammer, Brandon was upset about his relationship with Amber and warned that he would harm Hammer and his family if he did not distance himself from her. In response, Hammer claimed he retrieved a shotgun and shot Brandon. Fearing retaliation from the motorcycle gang, Hammer refrained from contacting the authorities and instead concealed the evidence. He dismembered Brandon's body in the bathroom using a saw and placed the remains into 5-gallon buckets filled with cement. Hammer sought assistance from his friend Van to load the heavy buckets into his pickup truck. After they completed the task, Van left and subsequently reported Hammer to the police. Hammer disposed of the buckets in a small pond on his property. Following the incident, he cleaned the house and later incinerated the cleaning materials, gloves, and rags. Hammer also mentioned that he gave Brandon's motorcycle to a relative, who unknowingly accepted the bike and later dismantled it for parts. The police investigation ultimately led to the discovery of 5 buckets at the bottom of the pond. When officers informed Amber of Brandon's death, she was taken aback and revealed that despite their divorce, they had intentions to reconcile. Amber also admitted to having had a confrontation with Brandon. The day prior to his death, following his revelation of her affair with Justin Hammer, investigators shifted their focus to Amber due to this new information. Amber asserted that Brandon departed on his motorcycle after their dispute. However, his family contended that the motorcycle was inoperable. This raised the question, if the motorcycle was not significantly damaged, why would Brandon take it to Oklahoma for repairs rather than addressing the issue locally? Amber's inconsistent narrative regarding her activities on the day of Brandon's death aroused suspicion. She claimed to have a doctor's appointment, yet the police were unable to locate any records of her visiting a medical facility that day, leaving her without an alibi for the time of Brandon's demise. Detectives later discovered that Amber had requested a friend to care for her son that day. When the friend arrived at 3:00 p.m., Amber and Brandon left the residence together in Brandon's pickup truck, which contained a motorcycle in the back. Amber left her phone behind and did not return for 8 hours. Upon her return, both Brandon and the motorcycle were absent from the truck. Investigators found a message on Amber's phone from Justin Hammer, sent just before she and Brandon left the house, stating, "The ink is ready." The police interpreted this as a coded message indicating that preparations had been made regarding Brandon. Conversations with Amber's close friends revealed that she had no desire to reconcile with her ex-husband and frequently expressed negative sentiments about him. She harbored bitterness over Brandon having full custody of their son and felt resentment towards him. New evidence surfaced that contradicted Amber's version of events, as forensic analysis confirmed that she had authored the message. A suspicious note was discovered in Hammer's safe, detailing items deemed necessary for body disposal. Additionally, footage from the local hardware store's CCTV cameras indicated that the crime had been premeditated, as it captured Hammer purchasing buckets and other items from Amber's list the day prior to Brandon's murder. Despite this evidence, Hammer maintained during his trial that he acted independently in self-defense, attempting to protect Amber from suspicion. He claimed that the items listed were intended for home repairs rather than for disposing of a body. Hammer asserted that he utilized two weapons during the incident, wielding a shotgun in one hand and a pistol in the other. However, investigators found this account to be dubious and implausible. The trial, which was anticipated to extend over several weeks, concluded unexpectedly with the jury deliberating for only an hour and a half. They returned with a recommendation for a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Assistant District Attorney Jennifer Austin expressed her satisfaction with the verdict, describing it as a just punishment that provided closure for Brandon Duran's family. She deemed the sentence appropriate. Brandon's mother, Cindy Ware, was elated with the jury's decision, recognizing the difficulty of their choice. She had hoped for this outcome for 2 years. In October 2014, Justin Hammer was officially sentenced to life in prison without parole. 2 months later, his wife Amber was arrested and charged with first-degree murder of her ex-husband, desecration of his remains, and conspiracy to commit a felony, despite her plea of not guilty. Amber was denied bail as she sat in the courtroom, handcuffed and wearing a light purple inmate suit. She expressed her frustration over the lengthy 32-month wait to be reunited with her son, having only returned home to him a month earlier. Desperate to remain with him until the trial, her request for bail was denied by District Judge Jeff Virgin of Norman, Oklahoma. The judge concurred with the prosecution's assertion that the gravity of the allegations against her rendered her a flight risk. The trial, which commenced in the spring of 2017, had been a long-awaited event, with over 2 years having elapsed since Amber was charged. She maintained her innocence, with her legal team asserting that she was not present at the crime scene. In contrast, prosecutors Christy Miller and Jennifer Austin contended that Amber had the strongest motive to kill Brandon Duran. Miller testified that Amber was the only individual with a motive to eliminate him, as she needed him out of the picture to regain custody of their son. According to Miller, Amber had a compelling reason to want Duran removed and had access to a location where the crime could be executed. The prosecutor elaborated that Amber's motive was to dispose of Duran to facilitate the recovery of custody of their young son. He highlighted that Amber had been away from home for 8 hours on the day of Brandon's death, and there was no evidence to corroborate her alibi. The prosecutor suggested that Amber may have assisted Hammer in disposing of the body and cleaning the house, thereby neglecting her parental duties. However, the defense attorney, J. Menros, contended that the prosecutor's office failed to present any evidence linking Amber to the crime. He informed the jurors that in the absence of evidence, the prosecution resorted to character attacks against Amber. According to Mendros, the state's case was founded on a theoretical premise, lacking any substantial evidence to substantiate it. He asserted that Amber was incapable of orchestrating a murder, suggesting instead that Justin, who feared losing her, was the actual perpetrator. Mendros characterized the scenario as a recipe for disaster, with Duran traveling to Oklahoma to revive his romance with Amber, while Hammer, who had been Amber's boyfriend for a year, was anxious about losing her to Duran. The defense attorney depicted the situation as a tragic love triangle, wherein Justin Hammer had a compelling motive to kill Brandon Duran, caught between his affection for Amber and the threat posed by Duran. The attorney argued that Amber had been emotionally entangled with both men, complicating the understanding of her true intentions. The prosecution's case relied on twisted and distorted statements that fostered a sinister impression, attempting to convict someone based on speculation and hearsay. The attorney stressed that in the American justice system, convictions cannot be based on assumptions, there must be concrete evidence, which was absent in this case to indicate that Amber was a co-conspirator or a murderer. Although Justin Hammer confessed to the murder, accepting full responsibility for the crime, it was Amber Andrews who was ultimately found guilty during the trial, with the jurors delivering a guilty verdict. A verdict was reached following the closing arguments, recommending a life sentence for 35-year-old Amber, who appeared in court on June 12, 2017, seemingly in good spirits as she awaited her sentencing. Brandon's mother, Cindy, took the stand, visibly emotional as she recounted the profound impact her son's murder had on her and her grandson, Brando. She placed a photograph of Duran beside her and articulated how Amber had shattered all her aspirations. Cindy expressed that Brandon's sole desire was to be with his family, a wish that Amber had brutally taken from him. With deep sorrow, she reminisced about the memories that would never come to pass, such as Brandon teaching Brando to snowboard and the radiant smile that would no longer illuminate a room. Before the judge rendered a final decision, defense attorney Jay Mendros addressed the court once again, asserting that there remained no definitive evidence linking Amber to the murder. He urged the judge to overturn the jury's guilty verdict and to restart the case. Mendros contended that the prosecution's argument was devoid of credible evidence and relied excessively on emotional appeals to influence the jurors. He argued that the state constructed its case against Amber based on conjecture and instinct rather than solid proof. The prosecution's approach appeared to aim at shocking and inciting outrage among the jurors instead of providing concrete evidence. Consequently, Amber was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for the first-degree murder of Brandon Duran, along with additional time for the desecration of human remains and conspiracy to commit a felony. Meanwhile, Justin Hammer is currently serving his sentence. The Oklahoma State Penitentiary is located in McAlester, Oklahoma, while Amber Andrews is currently serving her sentence at the Mabel Bassett Correctional Center in McLeod, Oklahoma. Since August 7, 2012, Brandon Duran has been under the care of the Oklahoma Department of Human Services, residing with a foster family. In January 2013, after a protracted and challenging court battle, Brandon was finally permitted to return to San Diego to live with his grandmother, Cindy. However, this marked only the beginning of further struggles, as it took Cindy an additional 5 years to secure full legal custody of Brandon. Once the custody dispute was resolved, Cindy and her family took the time to sit down with Brandon to clarify the details of the court's decision and to discuss the circumstances surrounding his mother's situation.